Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. At the Animal Alliance, we're committed to creating a future where no pet is euthanized because of overpopulation. Our spay and neuter programs are key to this goal. Visit theanimalalliance.org to learn how you can help. Your support could make a world of difference. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have on a guest. His name's Danny Lee. And we got connected, I think, on Facebook or I forget where, but we're going to trade each other's podcasts. And after talking to him and he was kind of interviewing me for his podcast, I said, man, I think it'd be great to hear your perspective and have you on my podcast, because when people go through these major life changes, which you're going to hear from him, those are inspired by questions that demand answers. And that's really what we want to focus on. What are the questions that are demanding answers for Danny? So just a little background, he'll go into more depth, but Danny is Ukrainian, left Ukraine to Romania, and now by Monday, so probably by the time you hear this podcast, he will be in Florida, right? So he's been gradually making his way to America, building businesses online, but operating them here in the United States, and is really excited about that move. But also you think, well, what would cause somebody to move not just from one country to another country, but move multiple countries to an end goal? What are you doing in your life that you're so passionate about, you're so committed to, that you're willing to uproot your entire life and move from one country to another country to another country just to get to where yourself in a position that you actually can accomplish what you want? So I'm going to let Danny kind of break down the rest of it, why that's happening, and then also get into a little bit of what his business is. But Danny, talk to us about your family life, growing up in Ukraine. What was going on? Maybe what's currently going on, and why is this move so important for you right now?
Thanks, Sam, for having me. I'm glad to be on the podcast and definitely share my story. Well, thanks for the intro. I think it was on point. I'm currently 22 years old. As Sam mentioned, I have a couple of businesses, which we can talk about a little bit later, but it's mostly online. AI related things. And I was born in a city of Odessa in Ukraine, lived there most of my life before leaving the country, maybe more than a month ago. And I was born to like a normal family. My dad is a dentist, my mom is an accountant. Went to like regular school, did regular things, but from the childhood I really liked math and like things like that. Also enjoyed sports, chess, soccer, and many other things. I guess my story starts probably in high school, where I found out my passion for programming, for software development. I quickly realized this is something that I want to do. I started just learning how to code by myself, also attended some classes, but mostly it was like just learning it by myself and trying different projects, building stuff. And I went to college to study software engineering, also locally in Ukraine. But I also realized we had an amazing professor at my freshman year who taught like business and startups, and I understood that I'm really into entrepreneurship and like building not just apps or software but companies, and just trying to bring some impact into this world. And yeah, since then we started a couple of startups with my friends. The first one was in the video gaming space. We tried to build a app that teaches you how to code, because this was the problem that I experienced in the past, where it was like certain concepts didn't quite make sense, and I wanted to help like people like me, maybe young teenagers or young adults, understand how to code easier. That didn't work out. We started another thing in like crypto NFT space, and again, we didn't have any like, it was five of us, my friends from college. Didn't really have too much experience, and that also failed mostly because of internal problems between co-founders. Like, I wasn't satisfied with the amount of work someone was doing, and like I decided to kind of have very harsh conversations with my friends, and that just ruined everything. We split like the money equally. We decided to close the project, but it just couldn't go beyond that path, beyond that point. And after that, we started our most recent startup called Narada, which we are working on more than 2 years now. We pivoted 3 times by this point, tried different things. Nothing really worked out for us, and a couple of weeks ago, we decided to try another idea in the sales space. So what we do now is we're building an AI that joins your one-on-one sales calls, and for you as a salesman, it gives advice or tips in real time, depending on how the conversation going. It says, hey, try saying this, oh, you forgot that, and basically assisting you to close the deal and increase the percentage of closed sales. And that's like one part of the story. Another part of the story, since I was like 14, 15, I fell in love with America and American culture. I'm a big baseball fan, and like a lot of things that attract me in the US in particular. I was super like passionate about like English and like American movies, culture, like connecting with people from the US, and that kind of made this trajectory, because in all of my companies or startups, it always was like targeting the American market. I tried to be to make it as American as possible, if it makes sense. So yeah, and in 2022, the war in Ukraine broke out, which certainly affected me as a person. I was, I don't know, 19 probably at that point. And to be honest, I was quite like naive and childish guy at that point. I didn't really like see the world too much, and like this helped me kind of become a stronger man and like a person, and realize like values like family and stuff like that that really important to you. And yeah, since the war started, I decided to work on myself, to be like more open, to try to be less shy, connecting with people, and just trying to do what I want to do, you know. I like what I'm trying to do in life. I understand what excites me, what drives me, and I just try to do it no matter what people say and what like the social norms are. And when it comes to this move that I'm currently doing with like relocation, immigration to the US, I always wanted to do that, and recently the opportunity struck where I could leave Ukraine for Romania, start some paperwork process there, and I got finally approved with my traveling visas and stuff, and now I can finally arrive in the US, to the States. And yeah, my future plans are continue. Oh, and totally forgot to mention, I also have a 9 to 5 job, which feeds me at the moment. I work in the data science / AI space. in also a US based company for like a logistics software provider, and we're working on like machine learning models and stuff like that. So yeah, I plan to continue doing what I'm doing, building my business, Narada, the AI sales tool, and also I started my consulting gig where I help people get started with ChatGPT, DALL-E, and other AI tools with their business, especially for people who never really use them too much, but understand the potential value there. I have like one-on-one sessions with clients to help them with that. So I'm doing that, doing the startup, doing the 9 to 5 job, and just also I have my own podcast, as Sam mentioned, where I try to interview like people in the business world to first to network, but also to learn from people from their mistakes, building those connections, and also building like a personal brand, which is also probably helpful in the long term. Yeah, just doing what motivates me, what drives me. When it comes to questions that I ask myself is probably it's what I want to really what I want to do in life, and what makes me happy, and what makes people around me happy, like my close ones, like my family, friends and stuff. And I just try to be genuine. I understand that especially in the business world, a lot of it is just like war, and there is like people compete, and like people manipulate and stuff like that, but I still try to kind of keep my soul and not fall for that, if it makes sense. So yeah, that's probably my story. Maybe I'm forgetting the details, but yeah, I guess we can start from here.
Hey, no, that's great. So I want to talk first about this kind of concept of first, just thank you for sharing this your experiences so far. But what would you say when you say a normal family in Ukraine? Like, what does that look like? And I say that because most people in America, I'm just saying this in America, most people who have a dentist for a dad and a mom who's an accountant, they in America generally they would be considered upper middle class. I wouldn't say they're like high class. They're not low class. I wouldn't even say they're middle class, but they're definitely upper middle class. That's not the norm in America for for somebody to have two parents that are of those professions. And if they were, they would be earning a much higher than average American income. So do you feel like it was normal because the neighborhood you lived in and the city you lived in, everybody had similar income? Or like, what about that do you feel like it was normal? And what were the gradations of like, okay, that's where I'd say that was on the lower side of income. And what was the next stage income up from where you're at? Be a hero for animals. Join the Animal Alliance in our mission to prevent the unnecessary euthanasia of cats and dogs. Our spay and neuter programs are essential to saving lives. Visit theanimalalliance.org to see how you can contribute. Together, we can make a lasting impact.
Yeah, well, to just give the context for the listeners and for you, like Eastern Europe in general is like it's different economically because like Soviet Union, communism, it still affects countries even since they became capitalist. Like it's still there. Like the market is different and the income is different. Like my parents, they still work and they don't make as much money as it would be in the US. Like first of all, like cost of living is quite different, but even like if we take a proportion, it isn't like upper middle class. And like I don't know even how to describe it in Ukraine. There is like a bunch of like I don't want to say poor people, but like people living like below the average income, like many people, and there are like very few people who are like very on a very top, like oligarchs and stuff, and there is like no like middle class in Ukraine, and I believe in like any Eastern European country, like most of them. So it's quite different. And in my specific case, we didn't have like a lot of money. We had like small apartment, like a couple of rooms, one car. I went to like a school, like a normal high school and stuff. So, uh, and we lived in like in an average neighborhood, and like in Ukraine, the neighborhoods, they are quite different from America. It's in Ukraine, it's more like a mix. Like you have like wealthier and like lower income people living kind of together most of the time. So, um, and yeah, I felt like I quite average, in terms of finances and stuff compared to other Ukrainians. And that's where I come from. Yeah, I understand that I had an opportunity to study, to go to college, to have like computer and stuff to code, and that definitely helped me. But it wasn't like we had a lot of money and stuff.
Is that more common or less common that somebody would have those types of resources and access to those types of resources, computers, having higher education, colleges? Like, is that pretty common that pretty much everybody gets to go to college, or is that something that was more
No,
uncommon than common for you?
I think it's like 90% of the population has that, I think.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have no idea. That's why one of the reasons I wanted to interview you is because I don't know much about that. I know that in America we hear certain things about what's going on over in that part of the world, and we don't really know, and we don't know that many people who actually are experiencing or have experienced it. So I just wanted to learn more about that. Now, are you a single child? How many children in your family? What are they doing?
No, I am a single child.
Okay. And cousins, did you have a lot of cousins that were around you? Did they all live in different places?
No, they always lived in different places, and all of my cousins are younger than me. So I have a part of my family in the U.S. They immigrated like more than 10 years ago. Another part is in Israel. Another part is in Ukraine. So I have like part of my family all over the place. But like I didn't have many of my cousins or like people, yeah, of my age, kids, when I was growing up, in my family around. So.
Okay. Yeah. So something that was fascinating when I spent 2 years over in Scotland and Ireland, and it's kind of a weird thing from an American perspective to go and think of this from a European perspective. Because in Europe, all of the different countries, they're their own country, their own government, and a lot of times their own language. Like it's very separated, and yet there's a lot of travel in between there. So for somebody to live like in Ukraine and have their family living in maybe the UK or in France or Spain or Israel or whatever, it's not like they live that far away. It's a plane ride away, right? In America, we feel like, oh, well, yeah, we have family in maybe Tennessee or these different places. And it's actually almost farther for us to see our family distance wise than for them to see their family, even though they're in completely different countries. And so when we hear it in our mind in America, we think, wow, that's a whole nother country. That's crazy. Where for us, living 3 states over or 6 states over is just a normal, oh yeah, they still live in America. And so it is a little bit different of a mindset to think of what that would look like, which is just, fascinating. I'm curious, when the war did start, what was one, how much has the war affected where you grew up, if at all? And what was kind of the sentiment of the general population there around it? Because again, this is all things that we hear over here. It's like, well, kind of where Russia came in, they were all wanting Russia to come in. And then there's other people who are like, no, nobody wanted Russia to come in. So like, I have no idea. From where you were at and your position in the country, what was kind of the sentiment of the people coming in there?
Well, first of all, my take is, from what I hear in the news, like two different sites in America, like let's say just CNN and Fox News. I think they both got it wrong and still kind of have their agenda, but it's kind of kind of in between, you know. Like the truth is kind of in between. Like when it started, like personally, my family was quite patriotic, if it makes sense, like
Mhm.
pro-Ukrainian, and I
Okay.
think like in at least in my city, it was like mostly pro-Ukrainian, but you always have like fifth column and stuff like people who are against. But I think most of the population just didn't want any wars and stuff. They just wanted to live peacefully. But when the war did break out, I'd say like 90% of people around, they were like super patriotic. They wanted to defend their country. So it was like this united spirit, kind of like what happened in America after 9/11 when everyone was super like patriotic and they wanted to defend their country. That what happened in Ukraine back when the war started, and people just wanted to protect their country. Um, and when it comes to like politics, why did it start? Like I don't know if anyone can know for sure, but in Ukraine, most of the population just thinks that Russia invaded. They wanted to take the territory, take the control, and they most of the population sees America and NATO as a ally and as a savior for the country. Of course, things have changed over the years as the war has been dragging on, like especially after like failed counteroffensive and stuff like that. People got demotivated, like there is a certain division inside the country, but the general notion is that Russia is bad, America is good, Europe is good, Ukraine is good. We need to protect the country, we need to take the territory back. Obviously there is like a problem with that because like I personally don't think it's possible at this point, but like and lately when people started to realize that like there's like it's very unlikely that Ukraine is gonna win, like there is this division because the government tells people what to do. There are like no elections at this point, but people started to realize, hey, something is wrong, and at this point is it's kind of starting to shake inside the country. Like people start to disagree with the government, which they can't change at the moment. But yeah, the political situation inside Ukraine isn't good. The war doesn't seem to go the right way. Like Russians keep taking more territory, and it doesn't seem like Ukraine has too many chances. And like I personally want Ukraine to consider at least trying to look at the like ways to negotiate and try to make peace. But like I still think that most of the population is pro-war, pro like defending the country and trying to take the territory back. In terms of like how it affected my place, at the start it like there were like occasional bombings and stuff, like you see missiles flying, drones and stuff like that, and martial law, like you can go outside at night, stuff like that. But I'd say after summer 2023, like it became worse. Like almost every day you hear explosions or shootings and drones flying, and it's just crazy for the like civil population. It becomes unbearable, at least in my view. It's very hard to do that, but people are still kind of having their spirit, and they want to continue. Most of the
So
population.
was
So
so was Odessa, is that part of like the front lines? Is there a lot of Russian uh people already there trying, like the war is right there, or is it already like, is that somewhere that's already pretty much been taken by Russia? Is that somewhere that is um maybe miles and miles into the battlefield where Russia's trying to acquire that land?
yeah. Yeah, well, maybe if you're listening to the episode and you can pull up the map, it would just make more sense. Basically, Odessa is on the coast of Black Sea. It's kind of to the western side of the country, so it was always quite far away from the front line. I think the closest that Russians got was like maybe 120, 150 miles away, but they were pushed back eventually. But it's still on the coastline, so it's easy for Russians to target Odessa from Crimea, like launch missiles, launch drones, and it's quite like open, but it was never under Russian control, and it has always been quite far away from Russia. Um, and having said that, Odessa, before, prior to war, and probably now too, is mostly Russian speaking city, and like most of the people never saw Russians as enemies. But after the war started, like many people changed their minds. They started to try to switch to Ukrainian language to preserve their culture and patriotism and stuff like that. So things have shifted, and they shifted naturally after it started with emotions and stuff, because like people, like one day you live a normal life and the next day you live in this crazy condition that never seems to end, and like psychologically it has an enormous effect on people's mental and stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I can't literally. I can't imagine. I don't ever want to have to imagine that happening in America. On that type of level. Even 2001, when the World Trade Centers were hit, that was not great, to say the least, and it was a horrific experience. But it was like one day of horrific experiences, and then it was over. And so it wasn't like every day we're living through this and we don't know how to deal with it. That's happened many times in our country in the past: civil wars, riots. Like, it's happened. It's not like it's never happened in America, especially while America was trying to expand its territory and fighting with all the different countries. Like, obviously that's how our country was founded. So not to say that it doesn't ever happen. It's been not in my lifetime, really. So that's fascinating. So what is your parents' plan? Do they plan to stay there? Or have they already left? What was the reason for going to Romania on your way to America rather than just going straight from Ukraine to America? The Animal Alliance is dedicated to ending the cycle of pet overpopulation and euthanasia. Through our spay and neuter initiatives, we make a difference. You can be part of this life-saving work. Visit theanimalalliance.org to find out how you can get involved and make a difference.
Yeah, well, when it comes to my parents, they want to stay there. Like, it's their choice, even though like the war is going on. They still just want to live there. Like, it's their home and it's their choice. For me, like, it's mostly like just legal and paperwork stuff. Like, it's hard to go straight from Ukraine to America. I needed to spend some time somewhere in the EU, in some country, before moving, just documents and stuff, because most of the embassies in Ukraine don't really work fully for visas and stuff, and like there's still you still have to go outside to get that. Yeah, and other point I want to bring, in terms of like America and civil wars and stuff. Like, as an outsider, I look at them at America and see this division. And again, I don't understand it because I haven't been there yet. But like, I just hope that Americans will figure it out and won't be like enemies to themselves, because like wars, they suck. You don't want to have it. Like, I'm fascinating. I'm always fascinated to learn about the Civil War in America, 1861, 1865. And unfortunately, when I see some signs of like 1850s or 1840s in America now, it doesn't look very good. And I just hope that like people realize that like the country is like in general is more important than like your beliefs. Like, I'm sure that you can find a common ground even in the current situation, and just like let the country at least be where it is now, where it's like the land of opportunity, like freedom of speech and stuff like that. Like, people from all over the world want to go to America because you just have better chances there. Like, people are generally better off in America. So it's very important to preserve this and just try to find a common ground, no matter on which side you are. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's good.
It's a fascinating thing. I don't know what I was literally due to, I mean, the political scene in America right now is not wonderful. Something that's never happened in the history of America just happened with the conviction of Donald Trump for what most, I would say, at least half the country feels are just ridiculous things. Like even on both sides of the aisle, it's not like a purely Republican versus Democrat belief. Like there's a lot of people on both sides who are like, yeah, this is now entering what happens in other countries, but it's never happened in America. And so that's fascinating as you're saying, like, okay, what does this look like? Well, we've had assassinations in our country. Like Civil War is a good example. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. We have, and by who is still left up for debate, I guess, because there's not been conclusive evidence as to who did it. But it is fascinating. I'm more on the side of I hope we can find a consensus beforehand. I don't. So far at least this point, and I don't know if this happened. This is kind of what's fascinating, and why I'm asking so many questions about the Ukraine situation. Is in America, it definitely is being. It's a much more cultural war right now than it is physical, for the most part. Are there still kind of crazies out there? Yes. Did we see a lot of stuff during the Black Lives Matter, COVID lockdown, all of that? Was there crazy things that happened? Yes. But in general, there's not like one side fits all, like a war happening, but it's definitely a cultural war right now where the battle of ideas is it's in full swing. And so when does that bubble over into physical unrest? I don't know. And it's a fascinating question, because when we're looking at, so I sit here with the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and one of the things in the Declaration of Independence is that this is just a quote from it. But it says, prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. So like, hey, we shouldn't change stuff. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right and their duty to throw off such governments and provide new guards for their future and security. And so it's kind of an interesting, like, how our country is founded was on this belief system of independence, and that, hey, we aren't going to be shackled by these ridiculous rules or fake things. But then also it's like, okay, at what point does it become so bad that we have to change something, versus allowing these little changes to keep the peace? And both sides feel like they're making too many concessions. That's what's interesting, is like, what would be the appropriate concession for Ukraine right now that the people would accept? If they've lost half their country, at what point does Ukraine say, okay, well, we're just not getting back half our country. Let's preserve the little part of the country we have, and that's now Russia. At what point, like, how do all the people who just got disenfranchised and now are in the Russian side of the camp, how do they feel about that decision?
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. But going back to what you guys have in America now, like from the outside, just to give you some hope, it's not as bad as it is in other countries. Like, and from my understanding of the U.S. history, it was worse, and it was much worse, especially around the Civil War and stuff, when like states started break away and like and just fight each other. And luckily, even though like, and again, like I consider myself more on the conservative side. Like I'm a Christian. I like believe in family values. I love like firearms and stuff like and I also love like for some reason especially like in America, I love like the Southern culture, like Alabama, Mississippi, all those kinds of places. But I still think that like with Trump and conviction, it's not as bad because he can still run and he can still win and he can still turn everything around. Like they didn't just put him in jail and said you cannot be elected. And people seem to be even more inspired by that, which means that the democracy still works and that's good. So like and again, in my point, like I see I try to look at the positives from both sides because like I have this unconditional love to America and I just want it to be preserved in the state it is now and blossom and stuff. So I just want like people to find this common ground and I still think it's possible. I still think it's not that bad, even though like for people like it's super emotional and like both sides they're kind of like they like you have this hatred and stuff. But I still believe that like hopefully something happens. God forbid America needs to go to war with China or stuff. But things like that they can unite the country. Hopefully it's not gonna be anything like that. But like just finding common ground and remembering that all of like people in America are Americans first. That might save the country, even though I don't think it's heading towards civil war or a banana republic or something. I still think like from the outside perspective, America stands like super high in this world, and things aren't as bad as they might be seen, even though I might be incorrect. So that's
No, I think that you're right, and that's what is fascinating. Is it's kind of there's this phrase in English that hard times make strong men make easy times make hard times, and then or easy times make weak men create hard times, right? Because it's just a cycle. And I think, unfortunately, that if we had access to history and if people actually followed history and learned from history, like you're studying this stuff. A lot of people in America, they're not. They're like worried about what color their shoelaces are, and it's like there's people getting bombed in Ukraine that can't, like, that's the last thing on their mind. They're wondering, how do I stay safe, right? And so because we've been so far removed as a country in general from any outside real force of anything significant, then that leads to an apathy towards everything. And there's no need for a sense of country pride, because why? It's not there. And there's also a fairly and this is maybe my perspective leaning through, but I think that there's enough people in America that don't trust fully the government and what they're asking them to do and what they're saying. Like propaganda, I know you guys have propaganda over there. We have propaganda over here. Like propaganda is a serious thing everywhere. So when you stop being able to trust certain sources of information, that does change things. And what's unique about today versus what was, let's take the Civil War or any of those wars back then, the propaganda all came from a unified place. Like it was all media, it was all government influence. Okay. Now with social media, it's really, really screwing up. And then going into the AI, especially with Dolly and what that's going to turn into, how many deep fakes are there going to be of people saying stuff that they didn't say? How much, like all of that's going to intensify the psychological warfare that happens. And because America has such great free speech laws, which I am in favor of, it opens it up to being more susceptible to that type of warfare than in other countries. And so it's, I don't know which is, I mean, obviously it's better to have a psychological or a war of words over losing lives. That's better. But it is something that is interesting. How do you see that in your AI world, the development of that, and how do you see that impacting um, the marketplace?
Mhm. Well, that's a great question because like I don't use TikTok. I haven't used it. Like I never used it, almost never, because of like data privacy, and I didn't want my data to go to China, even like 5 years ago or so. But I do use like Instagram and like Reels and stuff, and I found myself like whenever I see some video of like a politician speaking, I can't realize if it's fake or not because it got so sophisticated that even I fall for that. And like people say 60 years old and older, they wouldn't be able to distinguish between that like in their lifetime because it's so good now. So that's a problem for sure. But I still do think like my reaction to that was just don't believe anything you hear on Instagram Reels because it might not be true because it might be a deep fake. And I do think that like people would develop this kind of guards to kind of navigate through this like new AI affected world where they just like don't believe as much what they see on Facebook or see on the media or on the internet because like people start to realize how things work. And like I still try to have a positive view on AI and stuff. I don't think it's gonna like take over the planet or screw us up in a big way. I do think that like we will be using AI like mostly for good, and I don't think it'll be controlled by one, say, party or one like company or something. I do think it's gonna be fine, and you always need to find balance. I'm not a biggest fan of like regulations and stuff like that, but I understand that you need to have that side too because it kind of keeps you accountable and doesn't let you go all the way into the other extreme. So I don't think that the AI would affect us negatively. I like mostly I'm worried about like foreign governments like China and Russia and Iran and their propaganda because like they're humans who are very, very smart and who know how to uh, play into this game and like change the public opinion and make people angry. That's a bigger problem. And like I hope that like America will be able to defend itself from that. So
Yeah, and
that's my take.
it's an interesting thing. I don't know enough about it to know how to protect against that, but I mean, obviously it can happen because there's certain things that aren't allowed in China. So the stuff is the technology to limit what people can see is out there. It's just, do we allow that, and who has control of those levers? Because if we don't trust our government, and we don't trust China, we don't trust Russia, we don't trust Britain and whatever, right? Then who do you trust? And then you have to go into the private sector about who you trust. And once you go into the private sector, then it's rather than being veiled by secrecy, then it's very clear that they're after the dollars, right? They just care whatever's going to be clicked on the most rather than what might be true or not. It's just like, well, anybody can say what they want. Well, yeah, but when you have a shell shell corporation that's owned by China that's purchasing those advertising dollars, that's a problem in our country, right? And so it's a fascinating. It's going to be interesting. I'm excited for you to come to America because I think it's going to be better than you ever imagined it to be in so many ways. And I think that you have a unique perspective that if you choose to speak out, especially on your podcast, but speak out and say, look, this is where I came from. This is why I came. Let's preserve the good. This stuff that I'm seeing, this is what I'm seeing happened a few years ago, or this is what I'm seeing happened in these other countries because I've been in these other countries. Don't go down this path. We already know what that looks like. If you want a case study, this country, this country, this country, right? This isn't a secret. We've already done this. And if you can be a positive voice of change, or at least just exposing, like you have a lived experience that most people in America will never have. it's just the reality. In my lived experience, I was a Christian missionary in Scotland and Ireland, right? And so my experience over there, well, I got to understand the culture and be there for 2 years. So I got a little bit of it. But at the end of the day, I was very sheltered from a lot of things because I didn't have to work for income. I brought my money from America and I just existed there for 2 years. And so the tax system, I never got to experience the stress. That there was a lot of stuff that I was immune from. And because I was a Christian missionary, then I'd be in a lot of neighborhoods that as a normal human, you would never want to be in. But as a Christian missionary, you're somehow safe in these very dangerous neighborhoods because everybody knew you were not there to do anything other than talk about Jesus. And so there was no social unrest happening to you for the most part. And so that's kind of also something that's really fascinating is even when you go live in another country, unless you commit to assimilate to their culture and their country, then you're going to have a filtered experience. We won't say it's jaded, but you're going to have a certain experience that you believe something, and that may not be the case for the people who grew up and were raised there. So same thing when you're coming to America, and I fully believe that you'll do this, but my invitation would be fully assimilate to American values, not necessarily whatever somebody tells you America is, but like, hey, what was America's core foundation? Like, what was the purpose of America? And as you assimilate to that and speak out for that, then I think you have a better sway because you've experienced the contrast more than anybody else.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like my plan is to build my life in America and make this country better, build wealth and hopefully help it go through the hard times that we see now. Even though like the immigration system in America is so broken, like you have millions of people just crossing illegally and they're okay. And like if you want to go legally, you have to go through so many obstacles and stuff like what I start to do. So that's broken, but I still love it, and I hope to help it in some way. And I do want to fully assimilate, like even like little things like, you know, metric system switch to like miles and pounds and stuff. That's amazing. So
yeah, awesome. Well, hey, we're out of time, but I appreciate you coming on so much because I think that this conversation needs to be heard by more people. We need to get that perspective out there of how great America is. I do believe that in the long run, America will figure itself out. It maybe after some more hardship, hopefully before hardship, but I think that anytime you have a space this big, it's hard to have somebody else come and control it. And even if you manage to control it for a short period of time, there's 330 million people here that don't want to be part of another country. So it would be an interesting, and most of them on both sides own guns. And that gives me hope that, you know, it's not going away too fast. So come get your legal rights, get yourself some protection, and hopefully we can do it through words and influence people in a positive way. So thank you so much. And we'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show. Every pet deserves a chance at life. At the Animal Alliance, we are dedicated to ending pet overpopulation through spay and neuter initiatives. Visit the Animal Alliance today to support our mission. You can help save lives and create a better future for our furry friends. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.